Bill Kristol got his ass handed to him on Crossfire debating the Afghanistan war with a guy named Peter Beinart. This is delicious.
The American people are tired of war, and they don't want us to be more involved. You look at the polling on Ukraine, people don't want us to do more on Ukraine. Isn't it, in fact, the case that the president is right with the American people on being less interventionist?
Presidents are supposed to lead, man. Do you think the president was right in 1994 not to go into Rwanda? I'm sure the polls showed why we would get involved in some African countries. So what if 1 billion people are slaughtered? The intervention in the Balkans wasn't popular. Bill Clinton did it to his credit. We supported him at the Weekly Standard. Some of the Republicans opposed him. They were wrong in that case. Look, the announcement today on Afghanistan is unbelievably irresponsible. It's one thing to draw down to 9,800 troops. That's on the low side. Maybe that's enough to sustain the training and counterterrorism mission there. To announce ahead of time you're going to 0 troops, except for the troops guarding the embassy, at the end of 2016 is beyond irresponsible. It's totally crazy. You're telling them we're getting out. What are they going to... Wait a second. What is wrong with leaving it to saying I'm going to make a judgment based on conditions on the ground?
What's wrong with open-ended commitment?
Yes,
for blood and treasure for this country?
We have sacrificed blood and treasure in that country, and President Obama sent tens of thousands of troops there, and now he is making their sacrifice in vain. I find it sickening.
No, I actually think President Obama was wrong to send additional troops to Afghanistan.
But he sent them, didn't he?
And then he was wrong. I think it was the single biggest failure of his presidency in foreign policy, because the truth is we went to Afghanistan.
So how can you support a man who sends tens of thousands of troops to fight in what you regard as a
How did you manage to support a man so successfully who sent hundreds of thousands of troops?
I supported that war, Peter.
Disastrous war. Yes, and both of those wars have turned out to be
Afghanistan was a disaster. We were against the war in Afghanistan. Was the war in Afghanistan wrong?
The war in Afghanistan against the Taliban, yes. Against the Taliban, yes. Against Al-Qaeda, no. That was a very important distinction. The United States, we don't have enough money in this country to pay people who are unemployed unemployment benefits, according to the Republican Party. And yet we can continue to send for tens of thousands more troops in Afghanistan when we see what's happening to those troops when they come back. The incredible spike in training.
That's pathetic.
How is it pathetic?
You're treating the veterans as victims.
No, I'm not talking to veterans. I'm saying that
that's what you just said. What we see these troops when they come back. Oh my God! Most of those troops are proud of having served there. The President of the United States sent them. Let me finish my sentence. The President of the United States sent them there, and now he is running a huge risk of undercutting all they achieved.
Bill, my sister-in-law served in both Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm very fully aware of the patriotism of people who served in both of those wars. She left her small children to do so. But the fact that our soldiers serve honorably wherever they have sent does not mean that wherever they have sent is wise in the national interest. The cost to those families and those people has been enormous, and there is nothing in Afghanistan save preventing another attack on the United States that is worth it.
Oh, drop the mic and you're gone. Well done, son. Well done. Bill Kristol, how does that feel? This is just like when he got schooled by Bill Maher and he asked him, is there any war you don't like? No, I'm seriously amazed. Every time we do a story where we cover this neoconservative Bill Kristol, I'm amazed by how stupid he is. Like, he's one of the guys, you know how we always have this discussion, are different right-wing media figures and politicians, are they lying to you or are they idiots? And I say it always depends on which person we're talking about. Bill Kristol is a guy I believe. I think he actually believes the stupid shit that he says. So the answer for him is that he's an idiot. He's a moron. And he's a dangerous moron, too, a profoundly dangerous moron, because his idiocy sends your young daughters and sons to go die overseas for no reason whatsoever. And to see how arrogant he argues for his position, but he never makes a point. There's never a point. There's never something where you say, okay, got it, I understand what you're saying. Because it's open-ended. He just appeals to these vague ideas and these vague values where he's like, well, presidents are supposed to lead. What does that even mean? So when he says that, what he actually means is presidents are supposed to disregard the polls. So in other words, you're supposed to forget about democracy and act like a fascist dictator. So when Van Jones says, do you realize this is an incredibly unpopular war and all the places you wanted to intervene, the American people said no, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Syria, whether it's continuing to stay in Afghanistan, only 17% of the American people want to stay there, which is, by the way, more unpopular than Vietnam was at its most unpopular point. But Bill Kristol says, no, I don't care. And his reasoning is presidents are supposed to lead. That's an answer? Like, that's supposed to make people, like, not respond to you. Like, oh, it's okay, guys. No, we're going to stay in Afghanistan, and more people are going to die because Bill Kristol wants presidents to lead. But you could use that argument for anything. The president can do anything unpopular and just say, you can't question me because I'm leading. What does that mean, though? Why are you leading? What's the purpose of leading? What's the end goal here? That's something I'm amazed by, that people are basically asking him, well, we need to keep troops there. Why? And he's like, well, we just do. But that's not an answer. That's not a point. That's not a policy goal. That's not an action. There's no end to that conversation. It's not like, well, here's what we need to do. We need to make sure that the region is safe. We need to limit the number of Taliban operatives to under 3,000. We need to limit the number of Al-Qaeda operatives to this number or less. We need to make sure that the capital city is protected at all times. There's never any specifics. He's just like, no, just stay there. Well, why should we stay there? Because stay there. That doesn't mean anything. Like, I'm amazed by how stupid he is. The fact that you could see in his passion with how he's yelling, that's pathetic. It's amazing he's calling something else pathetic. Your reasoning is the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. But how can you be so passionate about something when there's not even, like, he doesn't even make a point that's even theoretically sound, never mind empirically sound. It's just these vague, vapid, vacuous terms like, president should lead, America is good, how dare you say the troops are victims? Like, what are you saying? And also the idea that President Obama keeping 9,800 troops there until 2016, and then maybe even staying there longer than that, keeping at least 1,000 troops there longer than that. The idea that that's too liberal a policy. A fucking war we've been in well over a decade, okay, where so many civilians have died, so many of our young men and women have died, so many of them have been injured, right? And we've stayed there over a decade, but that's not nearly long enough, and staying there longer with 9,800 troops, that's still too liberal. So what's conservative enough? What do you want to do, Bill? I mean, it's amazing. It sounds like he wants to just keep 100,000 troops there at all times and just permanently occupy the country. I mean, look, I always hate invoking Godwin's law, but he sounds very similar to certain people, if you know what I'm saying. Like, even if you look at our own numbers, okay, this will be the final thing I'll say on this, but even if you look at our own numbers from our own intelligence agencies, the CIA says that there's about 100 Al-Qaeda operatives in Afghanistan. Why the fuck are we still there? No, that's the end of the conversation. What are you talking about? That's insanity. That's so low. There's more Al-Qaeda operatives. There's more jihadists in Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, Mali, and a few other places too. You know, Syria, of course. And the idea that, no, just stay in Afghanistan and everything will be good, but you're not defining anything. You're not saying when you'd like us to leave. You're not saying what goals you'd like to reach. You just want to occupy places, and you just want to go to more war. And that's the thing. Bill Maher was right when he said, have you ever met a war you didn't like? The answer is no. Bill Kristol is a tried and true imperialist. He actually believes that Americans and America, that we are superior to everybody around the world. And anytime anything bad happens anywhere, we need to go and we need to help and we need to be the moral leaders. But what he refuses to recognize is that, yes, while sometimes we do have humanitarian missions and we do help people and we do the right thing, probably the majority of times that we use the U.S. military overseas, we're not being smart in how we use them. And we don't tell these brave young men and women that are fighting for their country that in reality you're really fighting for Halliburton and KBR and Raytheon and Boeing and different defense contractors that are getting really rich. You're fighting to topple governments and install puppet governments that are dictators that serve our corporate interests, like when we toppled the government in Iran in 1953, when the whole term Banana Republic is because we were toppling South American governments so that the Chiquita Banana Company can take their bananas from them and we can get rich. You know, we don't have 900 military bases around the world because we're nothing but pure humanitarians. No, everybody is subject to having greedy, bad impulses, you know. The idea that we purely went to Iraq or Afghanistan for humanitarian reasons, really? It's just a coincidence that there's oil in the region? Yeah, I mean, think about how many people died in Darfur. How many people are dying in a genocide in the Congo, you know? No discussion about going there. So spare me this moral outrage of, oh my God, we got to go help people. We got to go do this. We got to go do that. Really? I don't hear you arguing for invading in Darfur. I don't hear you arguing for invading in the Congo. I don't hear you saying we should sever ties with Saudi Arabia because they're one of the most repressive theocratic governments in the world. And they stone people to death. They kill gays. They don't allow women to drive or vote. No discussion about that from Bill Kristol, but he still wants to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. He is a pathetically irrational person.